Inland Telephone Company was run by Bob Wilcox, who lived in Caledonia. Two houses south of the bank on the left-hand side. That's being renovated now. But anyhow, Bob had telephones in Caledonia, Belgrade, Bellevue, and Irondale. And it was kind of like the old song that you used to hear about the Coon Creek party line. Everybody up and down the road had a telephone, two shorts and a long, or maybe three longs, or three shorts, or whatever on the ringing system. That was your call. And of course, whenever it rang, everybody on the line heard it, and everybody'd go get the receiver, see what was going on. That was called rubberdecking, you know.
So your phone would ring 3 short times, and you would know that was your...
If that was your call, right. And you got to know who the other rings, were on the particular line. Before Bob this was in my time, before I came along, they had a phone system. It was not run by Bob, but it had... when I came along, the phone was still on the wall, but there was no system. They had let it deteriorate to, there wasn't anything there. And Bob did the same thing over the years. He got older, and whenever you think about it, they just put up a pole along a fence somewhere to hold the line, and tree limbs were always breaking the lines, and you never really had a phone system. Each little town had a switchboard. The one in Irondale used to be upstairs over the old bank, I remember. In later years, it was up by the Baptist church. Whenever I got big enough to make calls, you could go there and had a little room where you could go in and make a phone call. And that's my first experience with phones until the modern system that we have now came along.
Wow. So did it cost you to make a phone call?
Oh yes, I think it was anywhere, depending on how far it was, you could call St. Louis for 45, 65 cents.
Wow.
The local call was 15 cents.
That was a lot of money.
But you made one maybe once every 6 months too, Paul. It was a different time, a different way of life. Somebody told you something, that's just the way it was. You never questioned. The first money I ever borrowed was $500 at the Irondale Bank. Willie and Rebecca Jamison was there. I signed no note. He put out his hand. He said, "I've done business with your dad all his life. What he tells me is right." Boy. Later years, it wasn't that way.
No, sir. So why did you borrow $500?
I wanted to buy some cows.
Okay. All right.
And that would have been probably 1950 that happened. So this was after I got out of high school, anyhow.
Okay. So what happened after you got out of high school?
Well, I got out in 49. There was a little thing coming along called the Korean War. In February of 1952, I took my Army physical. And the Army just didn't appeal to me all that much. So in March, I raised my hand with the Air Force. And spent 4 years in the Air Force.
Were you in Korea?
No. come out on orders, I know, at least 3 different times. I always was told I was a better teacher. Spent 42 months in Wichita, Kansas with the AT Air Training Command, training crews and pilots on B-47.
Wow. Well, that's an important job.
Yeah. I either knew a lot or didn't know anything. I don't know which.
Wow. So tell us, where did you meet Mrs. O'Neill? We've heard of the young Mrs. O'Neill from Denmark, but how about the current Mrs. O'Neill?
By the way, Mrs. O'Neill and I will be together 59 years coming the 24th this month.
Wow.
So we're going to have an anniversary coming up. Where did I meet Mrs. O'Neill? Well, her good brother and I, in 1957, I guess it was, 56, 57. I got out in March 56, so it could have been late 56, 57. Went to GI school together. Mr. Andy Trask, who lived down in Iron County, Bellevue area, was our teacher. We met at Ironton High School. And he found out that I was an old country boy that wasn't seeing any girls at that particular time, and he said he had a sister that he'd like me to call on. So he kind of soaped the board for me, so to speak, so it'd be nice and easy for me to get a date. And one thing led to something else, so as I said, we'll soon be together 59 years.
Wow. So back when you were courting Mrs. O'Neill, where did you go or what did you do?
Well, that was 1960. I had my own car. Backtrack just a little before I answer your question here. And talking about cars, I came home on leave from the Air Force in 1953, thumbing my way home. Dad said, "Jack, I'll loan you the money to buy a car, but I expect to be paid back." I said, "All right." So I went to Turner Stevens Chevrolet, bought a 52 Chevrolet 4-door, $1,865. And remembering this was Christmas time in 1952. I got out of the Air Force in March of 56, and I made my last payment the month before I got home. So remembering that when I first bought the car, I was making less than $100 a month, and $154 whenever I quit. So
wow.
Took that'll be that long to pay off my car. That was my first one.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then I came home, went back to Turner Stevens. Cliff Stevens was running the used car lot. I seen a 1957 2-door Chevrolet. Oh boy. And if you're a car enthusiast, you know that the 57 Chevrolet was one of the prizes of all time.
Absolutely.
So I bought a 57 Chevrolet. And that's when I courted Mrs. O'Neill in.
I see.
After we were married, I traded the 57 off, which is one of the worst decisions I ever made, and I bought a 59, which was the biggest lemon that I ever bought in my life.
Oh, no.
But good Lord took care of everything. Mrs. O'Neill wouldn't exactly agree with that because she was teaching in Caledonia at the time, and on the way home on M Highway, somebody pulled out of U highway coming from Bismarck and broadsided her, and that was the end of the '59 Chevrolet. Totaled it out. She was not hurt, but we were without a car for a while.
Now, were cars insured like they are?
Oh yes, oh yes. That was quite a lengthy process. So the lady that I had my insurance with at the Irondale Insurance Agency, one Louise Bryan, had failed to put down comprehensive and full coverage on the car. So we had a lawsuit, but she took care of me. It was her fault, and she admitted it. And so it was about 6 months before we had wheels again. But,
oh my goodness! Wow. So how did Mrs. O'Neill get back and forth to school?
Oh, we used my dad's car, 1950 DeSoto, which is still out on the farm. It's not in very good shape, but it's still there. Back up a little bit. My father-in-law's mother knew my dad whenever he was a little boy. That's another story I'll spin for you here in a minute. Knew the family, knew my grandmother. He never questioned my integrity too much. Hardy was a wonderful gentleman. He had thoroughly good mother and father-in-law. Treated me like I was their son. A little funny here, and I spoke at my mother-in-law's funeral. She once told me, after I'd been married for a little while, that I was the best son-in-law she had. And of course I busted my buttons until I thought, hey bud, you're the only son-in-law she's got. So you had to be the best one. But no, my mother and father-in-law were top of the line. I can remember that my mother's brother, who lived, well, if you're familiar where the parking spot is for Hughes Mountain trail access, he was across the road. Was where my Uncle Richard Providence was there. He always helped. Butcher, my Uncle Luke Williams, who lived, was my mother's sister's husband. My Aunt Minty lived maybe 200 yards from our house. They were two that always helped. Usually my Uncle Richard's older son, Hank, who worked at an independent packing company, was home over Christmas holiday, and he was there. Hog killings could be a community affair. It was at least at the smallest a family affair. My Uncle Luther Williams was different. I'll use that terminology. I can remember one time at hog killing, he always had a big meal for hog killing. And my sister, who I mentioned was 13 and a half years older than I am, was one of the cooks. And she'd made apple pie. And her nickname was Billy. And Uncle Lute was a very slow eater. Everybody else would be done and gone, and he'd not be to dessert yet. And I can remember that we had homemade ice cream. This was Christmas week now, and there was ice on the branch, so we had ice to make homemade ice cream. And she asked him, Uncle Luke, do you want a piece of pie? And he looked her up at her and he said, "Billy, I'll have a piece of pie and then I'll have the ice cream." To further enlighten you so you can see why I said that like I did, Uncle Lute never got above using a team. He died after I come home from the Air Force, and well, a stroke, but he always used a team. And he had an old mule, called him Old Pete. And Pete never knew where home was. He could jump any fence or gate that was in the community and was always at the neighbors. And somebody said to my uncle one day, "Lute, that Pete mule is sure bad to jump." Uncle Lute didn't say anything for a minute. He said, "Nope, he's good at it." That's the kind of individual that he was. He had a dry sense of humor. Uncle Lute was on the old Williams place. His father was, in his day, called Squire Billy, and kind of a forerunner to a justice of the peace. His dad, in later years, was a justice of peace for that township. If you read the Independent, you might have seen the thing I brought to where the Pierce Robinson at that time was the constable and Uncle Lute's father had sent him a message to go collar a gentleman whose last name was Gregory and bring him to him for beating somebody up. I brought that and gave it to Chris Richards one time.